I sponsored Sophia for 7 years and had a crush on her for just as long. She finally agreed to be with me, but later I found out that the person she really liked was someone she grew up with. Sophia had always resented me, thinking that I was throwing money at her and humiliating her. 10 years into our marriage, Sophia was extremely cold towards me, and eventually, she moved out to live with that childhood friend. I was left alone in the empty house, with my heart broken, and I died in depression. When I was reborn back to the day I decided to sponsor her, the person who grew up with Sophia stood in front of her, and said to me excitedly, "Just because you have money, you think you're something. We don't need your charity." I laughed and said, "You're overthinking. I'd rather burn this money than give it to you too." And now, let's start the story. If you like it, please subscribe. James, so what if you have money? You think being rich makes you superior. We don't care about your money. I looked at David, who was standing protectively in front of Sophia. I felt a bit dazed. My eyes met Sophia's. At 20, there was still a hint of innocence on Sophia's face. She was wearing a washed-out linen dress. Yet, she was breathtakingly beautiful, with a tall and slender figure, porcelain white skin, and eyes as bright as stars, which somehow made the simple dress seem elegant. I couldn't help but take a step back and hold onto the table behind me to steady myself. How long had it been since I last saw such a Sophia? 10 years. Or 20. It was so long ago that I couldn't remember clearly. After all, that was in my past life. Sophia was slightly startled when she saw me step back. David was still ranting on, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. Everything in front of me was exactly the same as in my past life. Back then, she refused my sponsorship, but I insisted on helping her. I had liked Sophia for 7 years. I knew her family was poor. Her father was a gambling addict who, after losing all his money, would come home drunk and beat her and her mother. Her mother couldn't take it anymore and finally committed suicide by drowning. Since she was a child, Sophia had to pick up trash and do odd jobs to make a living. She also relied on applying for scholarships to go to school. I, on the other hand, grew up in a wealthy family. We shouldn't have had any intersection. However, because she was always top-notch in her studies, our private high school offered her a scholarship to boost the school's enrollment rate, and that's how we ended up in the same high school. At that time, most of the people in our circle were rich kids who had no interest in studying. They muddled through their days, waiting to go abroad to get a diploma and then come back to inherit the family business. Only Sophia was different. She had clear goals. She studied hard in class and worked part-time after school. Although she didn't have much money, she never felt ashamed. She was always neither humble nor pushy. She was so unique, like a beautiful and tenacious wild orchid growing in a greenhouse, standing out from the ordinary. That's when I fell for her. I couldn't bear to see her suffer because I liked her. Back then, I was young and naive. I always thoughtlessly stuffed everything I thought was good into her hands. She had to work at night and often didn't have time for breakfast, so I would bring her lunchboxes from home. "Sophia, the Wagyu beef cooked by my family's nanny is the most delicious. Try it. And this foie gras was specially air-shipped by my dad. It's so fragrant." At that time, I was the only child in my family, living a life of ease. Everyone around me spoiled me, making me rather thoughtless. I just wanted to give her the best, completely ignoring whether she wanted it or not. The classmates around us started to jeer, "James, she doesn't know anything about foie gras. Ha ha, she probably can't even afford chicken liver." I scolded them, "Mind your own business." I didn't notice that Sophia was gripping the lunchbox tightly, her fingers turning white. After a moment's pause, she returned the lunchbox to me and said coldly, "Thank you for your kindness, but I don't need it." "Come on, Sophia." A girl said with a knowing look, "If you get together with James, you'll never have to work again. Hurry up and latch onto him. Yeah, then your dad can gamble as much as he wants, and he won't have to think about your tuition anymore." Ha ha ha. Everyone burst into laughter. I slapped the table and stood up abruptly, "Shut up, all of you." The others stopped laughing, but Sophia suddenly stood up and walked out. I chased after her, trying to stuff the lunchbox into her hands. "Sophia, don't listen to their nonsense. Eat the food quickly. Otherwise, you'll have to work at night, and your body won't be able to take it." She stopped and turned around suddenly. I was stunned. Her eyes were filled with hatred and disgust. Young people have short memories. I quickly forgot about that incident and continued to pester Sophia. For her sake, I even started to study hard and got into the same university as her. My father was overjoyed and doubled my living expenses. In college, Sophia was even busier. She didn't get the scholarship, and the poverty subsidy quota was snatched by a classmate with connections. At her worst, she could only buy one steamed bun in the cafeteria every day and drink free soup to fill her stomach. I couldn't stand it and said I wanted to sponsor her, but she refused. She took on 3 part-time jobs and finally even fainted on the road. That's when I couldn't hold back anymore. I grabbed her and forced the money on her. "Sophia, why don't you take my money? What are you exhausting yourself for?" I went to her class teacher and paid her tuition by force. At that time, I had grown a bit more sensible and knew to take care of her self-esteem. So, when eating, I would always pull her along and say I couldn't finish my food, asking her to eat with me. When going out to play, I would always say I got free coupons and drag her along. Slowly, Sophia and I seemed to get closer. I sponsored her until she graduated. To make her happy, I even sponsored David, the person who grew up with her. After graduation, Sophia started her own business. She had always been excellent academically. In school, she and her friends had developed a stock trading model software, but they hit a wall everywhere and couldn't get any investment. I couldn't stand seeing her so depressed, so I asked my dad to invest in her. I remember that night Sophia was very quiet. When I was almost falling asleep with my arms around her, she suddenly said, "James, why are you doing this?" I thought she was going to say, "Why are you so good to me?" So, I said complacently, "Because I like you, Sophia." "Do you like me?" I took her hand. "I've been so good to you. If you don't be with me, you're really heartless." At that time, I was just joking, but Sophia didn't say anything. I thought she had tacitly agreed, and that's how we got together. 2 years later, Sophia and I got married. The wedding was a simple affair. Sophia said she didn't like too many people, so we only invited a few tables of close relatives and friends, all of whom were mine. On her side, there was only her. After marriage, Sophia was still cold to me. I was so stupid back then. I thought that was just her personality. Anyway, I had been chasing her for so many years. As long as I continued to be good to her, even a heart of stone would be warmed by me. But I didn't expect that she really couldn't be moved because her heart had always belonged to someone else. In the 3rd year of our marriage, the conflicts between us could no longer be reconciled. I couldn't stand her coldness day after day. I questioned her if she liked that childhood friend of hers. She just looked at me coldly and said nothing. When I pushed her too hard, she would just slam the door and leave. I was driven more and more paranoid and crazy by her cold violence. As soon as she came back, I would question and scold her. In the most intense argument, I blurted out, "I should have known you were such an ungrateful person. I might as well have raised a dog. At least it would wag its tail at me." For a moment, anger flashed across her face, and then she quickly calmed down. After that day, Sophia completely stopped coming home. Later, I found out that she had already been with her childhood friend. They had a new home outside, and even worse, Sophia was pregnant with his child. In those years, she was happy and had a complete family outside, while I was alone in the empty house, with all my love turning into venom full of hatred. Sophia's business was a success. She became even richer than my father. I had nothing to retaliate against her with. The only thing I had was our marriage. I gambled with my life to take revenge on her. I refused to divorce her no matter how much money she gave me. She ruined me, and I wouldn't let her have an easy time either. The man she loved could only be a despised mistress forever, and the child she had with him could only be an illegitimate child living in the shadows. Sophia didn't dare to sue me either. She was afraid that if our marriage dispute became public, it would affect the company's stock price, and the other directors wouldn't allow it. So, I dragged her along for 10 years. No matter how hysterical or crazy I was, and even when I finally softened and begged, she never showed any mercy and never came back to see me. I gradually wasted away in the despair day by day, got seriously ill, and finally died in depression. "James!" I suddenly came back to my senses and looked at Sophia beside me. A deep hatred welled up from every part of my body. My heart almost burst, and for a moment, I could barely stand. After I died, she finally got what she wanted, right? Perhaps she treated me like that just to torture me to death quickly. I still remember that my medicine was suddenly replaced before I died. When I asked the butler, he just said it was a milder medicine, and I didn't suspect anything. However, soon after taking this medicine, my health started to deteriorate, and in the end, I couldn't even sit up. It wasn't long before I died. It was her, wasn't it? Besides her, who else could it be? She hated me so much that she hoped I would die immediately. She wanted to marry David. How vicious. I looked at Sophia, trying to suppress the urge to rush up and kill her. I was so angry. I thought I had done nothing wrong to Sophia except for being a bit thoughtless when I was young and not taking good care of her self-esteem. I didn't even force her to marry me. I even asked her if she was willing. If she wasn't, I said I could wait. But she hated me so much. David was still shouting at me as he did in the past life. James, you think being rich makes you great? How dare you insult people like this? Take your filthy money and get out. I looked at him. David was actually good looking, but wearing a somewhat shabby tracksuit, he looked a bit shabby. He was staring at me with an excited expression. This was the man Sophia loved, the man she was willing to be with even if it meant killing me. It was the same in the past life. Sophia and I were talking normally. I told her that if she felt uncomfortable, she could pay me back the tuition fees when she made money in the future, as if I had lent them to her. But David suddenly accused me of throwing money at them and said I was insulting Sophia. Later, in the arguments with Sophia, I gradually realized that she had always thought I was humiliating her by giving her money. I suddenly found it ridiculous. Looking at David's protective look, I curled my lips. You're overthinking. I'd rather burn this money than give it to you too. Sophia's face changed drastically, and David's expression blanked for a moment. What did you say? I smiled. Didn't you say that my sponsorship was an insult to you? We're all classmates. How could I insult you like this? If that's the case, forget it. You can go back to working part-time. David's family situation was similar to Sophia's. His father owed debts and ran away with the money, and his mother got sick from working to support his studies and could only lie at home now. Probably because of their similar situations, he and Sophia had always been very close, always sticking around her. He always liked to pester her to go with us when Sophia and I went out. Sometimes I didn't want him to, and he would ask me in front of Sophia, James, do you think I'm poor and don't want to be friends with me? Before I could answer, Sophia would take his arm and say coldly, if you think we're not good enough for you, then don't go. I had to take him with us. At the dinner table, he would look at the lobster on the plate and say, do you eat such good things every day? We really don't belong to the same world. Several times, Sophia and I were chatting happily, but he would suddenly say something like this, and Sophia's smile would disappear, and she wouldn't talk to me anymore. At first, I thought he was just being thoughtless. But later, once when Sophia and I were walking together, I suddenly turned back to say something to him and caught his look at me. David had no expression on his face, and his eyes were full of viciousness and resentment. When he saw me turn back, he was a bit caught off guard and quickly forced a smile, but I just felt a chill down my spine. That's when I realized that David hated me, or rather, he resented me. In fact, when Sophia and I just got married, there was a short harmonious period. At that time, her company was on the right track, and she got her first order. After the celebration party, she drunkenly put her arms around me and said with a smile, honey, what do you like? Wife will buy it for you. I felt sorry for her hard-earned money and hugged her contentedly, no need. Your company is just starting up and needs money. I'm happy enough that you have this thought. But Sophia wouldn't let it go. She hung around my neck and coquettishly said, wife makes money for husband to spend. I'll buy you a car. What kind of car do you like? Even when she fell asleep, she was still mumbling, James, I have money now. You don't have to accommodate me and suffer with me anymore. Sure enough, she bought me a car the next day. But before I could say anything, David came along. David looked at the car key in my hand, and his expression suddenly became a bit strange. Then he snatched the car key from my hand and said to Sophia with a smile, oh, I remember James had this car in college. It was given to him by a friend, right? He thought it was too cheap to drive at that time. I had long forgotten if there was such a thing. However, Sophia's expression suddenly became very ugly. Then she took the car key and left expressionlessly. After that, she started to be cold to me. And when I saw the car again, David was driving it. He had a smile on his lips and said casually, James, Sophia gave me this car. You won't be angry, will you? Of course I wouldn't allow it. I asked him to return the car to me. A look of resentment flashed across his face, and he shouted at me, you already have so many cars. Why do you have to fight with me for this one? I only have this one, while you have so many. Sophia pulled me away with a dark face, let go. Since you don't care about it, why fight with him? Or do you just like things you have to fight for? I was arrogant at that time and couldn't stand this kind of treatment. I had a big fight with her and we parted unhappily. Later, I realized that what David was talking about wasn't the car at all. He was talking about Sophia. He thought I had taken her away, so he hated me so much. James. When I came back to my senses, Sophia seemed panicked and grabbed me, wait a minute. I turned around and was stunned for a moment when I saw her expression. There was an undercurrent of emotions in her eyes, as if something was about to burst out. Even her voice was trembling. No, this shouldn't be the way. James, why don't you sponsor me anymore? Don't you like me? I was shocked by her madness. What was wrong with Sophia? Was she crazy? Or was she angry because of my tone when talking to David? But in the past life, at this time, I hadn't caught up with her yet, and she was always very cold and unsmiling to me. Was she out of her mind? I tried to shake her off, let go. But she held on tighter, and even her eyes were a bit red. James, don't you like me anymore? Don't you want me anymore? Now I was really scared. When had Sophia ever said such things to me? I widened my eyes. Sophia, are you out of your mind or possessed? She didn't say anything, just stared at me intently, unblinking, with a paranoid and crazy expression. I got angry. She treated me so badly in the past life, and now she still dared to stare at me. Don't you think my sponsorship was an insult to you, Sophia? Or are you just shamelessly waiting for me to beg you, trying to live off me? David opened his mouth, seemingly not expecting me to talk to Sophia like this. Indeed, at this time in my past life, I liked her the most. Every word I said was cautious, for I was afraid of hurting her self-esteem. But now, I don't care anymore. Sophia, who do you think you are? I said with contempt. You're heartless and ungrateful. I really wonder how I could have liked someone like you before. Surprisingly, Sophia didn't get angry. The color just drained completely from her face, leaving it deathly pale. I shook off her hand and left without looking back. There was $200,000 in the card for Sophia, which was enough to cover her tuition and living expenses. I took the card and went straight to spend it. Giving money to her would only bring me trouble. I might as well buy another watch. At least I could tell the time with it. In my past life, except for that one car, Sophia never gave me anything else. On my birthdays, anniversaries, and festivals, I would carefully select gifts for her, but she always either forgot or didn't care. On the contrary, David suddenly became rich. He used Sophia's money to shop around, buying cars, watches, and clothes worth hundreds of thousands. Every time he bought something, he would come and show off in front of me. James, this was specially brought back for me by Sophia from Paris. What did she bring you? I bet. He sneered. She didn't bring you anything, right? Then I would have a big fight with Sophia, and our relationship got worse and worse. Now that I think about it, I'm so rich. Why should I care about her buying things for me? I can buy whatever I want myself. I added another $100,000 to the $200,000 and bought a Vacheron Constantine. On my way back to school, as if by some bad luck, as soon as I got out of the car, I saw David and Sophia. His eyes were instantly drawn to the new watch on my wrist, and his expression changed abruptly, showing undisguised hatred and envy. At this time, Sophia was still penniless, and he was just as broke. The tracksuit he was wearing had frayed edges showing, and although he had tried to cut off the loose threads and iron it flat, it was still obvious at a glance that it was a cheap item from a street stall. James, you're really rich. David stared fixedly at my wrist, his fists clenched. Vacheron Constantine, it must be expensive, right? One watch is enough to cover our tuition for several years. He leaned closer to Sophia and said beside her, deliberately or not, we really don't belong to the same world. In the past, when David said this, I would be busy defending myself. But I was clumsy with words, and the more I explained, the unhappier Sophia would be. Now, I don't care about him at all. I smiled slightly. It seems you're not only poor, but also slow-witted. Only now do you realize this. I live in a 500 square meter single-family villa in the city center, while you live in a 30 square meter shabby apartment on the outskirts. Of course, we don't belong to the same world. David's face turned green, and his features twisted instantly. I walked up to him and said word by word, David, you'll never be able to be in the same world as me. Just be jealous until you die. Sophia. He quickly regained his senses and immediately started to play the victim in front of Sophia. I sneered. What else can you do besides being a parasite clinging to a woman? You're nothing but a disgusting bug in the gutter. Don't bother Sophia anymore. You two are just as bad, equally disgusting. After scolding this couple, I happily went home. It's not that I didn't want to take revenge on them. I've always been haunted by the matter of being drugged in my past life. But first, this hasn't happened yet in this life, and I have no evidence. Second, I really don't want to waste my life on these two scumbags anymore. I was tortured for a whole lifetime in my past life, and that was painful enough. In this life, I just want to stay away from them. Whether they live well or not has nothing to do with me. I want to start a new life. However, as much as I wanted to avoid them, they just wouldn't leave me alone. A few days later, a friend came to me specifically and said with glee, "You didn't sponsor Sophia and David, and now they're in a terrible mess. They can't even pay their tuition. I heard Sophia is working like crazy outside, and David wanted to buy a new pair of pants that only cost 80 yuan, but he couldn't scrape together enough money even after checking his WeChat, Alipay, and cards. He even sold the iPhone you bought for Sophia before to barely get enough for the tuition." It took me a while to remember that at this time in my past life, I saw that Sophia's phone was too old, so I gave her the latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. But the next day, the phone was in David's hands. I lowered my eyes and said with a sneer, "Really? They're really poor." I hadn't walked a few steps when David stopped me. He was excited, grabbed me, and said angrily, "James, why don't you sponsor Sophia anymore? Do you know she has the highest GPA in her major? If her studies are delayed because of tuition, can you take the responsibility?" I was stunned at first, and then I was so angry that I laughed. I had already figured out in my past life what kind of people they were. They wanted to take other people's money but were too proud to admit it. They were typical of those who eat with the bowl in hand and curse after putting it down, incredibly shameless. So what if she had the highest grades? What did it have to do with me? I shrugged. "I'm not her father." "How can you say that?" The classmates who knew us gathered around. David became even more energetic, pointing at me as if I were a bully who bullied men and women. "One of your watches can cover our tuition for several years. What's wrong with sponsoring us? Or are you just so selfish that you'd rather waste money than help those in need?" David probably thought everyone would be brainwashed by his shameless words like Sophia. Before I could speak, my friend, who had a similar family background to mine but was much more hot-tempered, said, "Which mental hospital didn't close its door properly and let you, this idiot, out? If you want money, you can go beg. Or you can even sell your ass. Although you're not good looking, someone will surely pay 80 yuan for it once. 10 times is 800 yuan, and 100 times, you'll have your tuition. You have arms, legs, and kidneys. Why do you have to shamelessly ask others for money? Are they your father?" David usually annoyed people in a sneaky way and had never encountered such a direct scolding. He was stunned for a moment and couldn't say a word. The other classmates also chimed in, "Yeah, if you don't have money, you can apply for a scholarship. Asking others for money with this kind of attitude is just shameless. People like him deserve to be poor." David took a step back, his eyes wide with disbelief. I sneered. Usually, I treated classmates to meals every now and then and was willing to pay when we went out to play, so naturally, the classmates were on my side. Now that I think about it, David had nothing except Sophia. He couldn't compare with me in any way. If I hadn't been bewitched in my past life and had my eyes only for Sophia, a person like him wouldn't even have caught my eye. Just then, Sophia suddenly showed up. "Sophia," David quickly went over to complain. "I just asked James to sponsor you. He has so much money to buy watches but is unwilling to help you. I don't know what I did to offend him, and he insulted me badly." "James," he immediately changed his tone, becoming submissive. "I know you look down on me, but I'm doing this for Sophia's sake. She's so excellent." I was extremely annoyed. David was like a toad that jumped onto someone's foot. It didn't bite, but it was really annoying. The most hateful thing was that he just wouldn't go away. Sophia frowned slightly. "Did you scold him?" I couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. As expected, she was always like this. As soon as David played the victim, she would scold me without asking for the truth. In the past, every time I would get so angry that I would jump up and argue with her, and then feel sad secretly. But not anymore. I raised my eyelids and looked at Sophia. Yes, he's right. I did scold him. However, to my surprise, Sophia didn't get angry. She lowered her head and said in a gentle, almost flattering tone, "Then he must have done something wrong to make you angry." Then she turned to David and said lightly, "James is not an unreasonable person. Apologize to him." I was dumbfounded. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. David was also stunned. After a long time, he said in disbelief, "Sophia, what did you say?" Sophia's face turned cold. "I told you to apologize." David was shocked and angry. "How can you do this?" I was also completely confused. Sophia actually asked David, the man she had always cared about, to apologize to me. Was she out of her mind? A thought flashed through my mind. Could she have been reborn too? But then I dismissed this idea. It was impossible. In my past life, Sophia hated me so much that she might even have drugged me to death. If she were reborn, she would surely run away as far as possible the first time. She must have some other scheme. I distanced myself and looked at her warily. Sophia seemed hurt by my gaze. She looked at me with a wounded expression. James, I know I was wrong before. Please forgive me, okay? Don't you like me? Let's be together, okay? I'll make up for what I owed you before. The more she spoke, the more excited she became. In the end, she stared at me intently, her eyes blazing, as if looking at a precious treasure she had lost and found again. Her voice was choked with sobs. This was ridiculous. I couldn't help but clench my fists. In my past life, I had pursued her desperately for a lifetime, but I had never heard her say she liked me. In this life, after I insulted and scolded her like this, she actually said she liked me. What did my efforts in the past life count for? I sneered with disgust. Be with me. Sophia, who do you think you are to be with me? One of my clothes is worth 3 years of your work. You're so self-righteous. Why do you think you can be with me? Since she thought I was humiliating her, let her feel what real humiliation was. Sure enough, Sophia's face turned deathly pale in an instant, and she said eagerly, I don't have money now, but can you wait for me? I'll have money in the future. She was right. She would indeed be very rich in the future, but what did it have to do with me? The hatred and disgust in my heart were almost uncontrollable. I looked at her contemptuously. Sophia, even if all the women in the world died, I wouldn't be with you. After I left that day, Sophia stared at me in a daze. She looked so pitiful, her shoulders slumped, and she stood there like a soulless person. I just sneered in my heart. I didn't know what she was up to. Whether she suddenly woke up or was out of her mind, the James who had loved her desperately had died in the past life and would never come back. Without my sponsorship, Sophia and David had an even worse life in this life than in the past. Sophia's program wasn't sold, and her business venture failed. I heard they were so poor that they were almost going to sell their blood. But all these had nothing to do with me anymore. Early the next morning, my phone rang. I picked it up, and the screen showed Olivia. She was a friend I used to have. I couldn't help but feel a bit dazed. It had been more than 10 years since I last saw this name. When I was with Sophia before, she didn't like me associating with female friends or my rich second-generation buddies. Gradually, I became estranged from many friends. Olivia and I had a family-to-family friendship. We had a good relationship since we were kids. The car I got in college was a birthday gift from her. I just remembered now that she said at that time it was the bonus her father gave her for closing a big deal, and she told me to cherish the car. Unfortunately, at that time, my heart was full of Sophia, and I had no time for other women. That car was left unused at home. I answered the phone, and Olivia's excited voice came through. James, I heard you scolded that woman Sophia. Before I could say anything, she continued excitedly, it's about time you taught her a lesson. She ate your food and used your money, and even PUA'd you. We didn't dare to say anything before, but you're finally awake. I smiled slightly. What's up? Tonight's a gathering at the old place. 8 o'clock. You must come. After hanging up the phone, it took me a long time to remember that the old place was the bar we used to go to. A few of my childhood friends often hung out there. After being with Sophia, I rarely went out. I used to have an arrogant and unruly personality, but for the sake of love, I pulled out all my thorns. I stopped going to shopping malls and started learning to shop at street stalls and markets. I no longer wore luxury goods and carefully selected clothes worth only a few dozen yuan, just so that Sophia wouldn't frown when I stood beside her. I didn't dare to go to the restaurants I used to frequent. Occasionally, when we went out to eat, I would only go to roadside food stalls with her for some barbecue. I lived my life carefully, just hoping she would like me a little more. I had loved her so wholeheartedly. When I arrived at the bar at night, Olivia was very happy and kept persuading me to drink. I didn't refuse and enjoyed this long-lost relaxation to the fullest. These friends were actually very nice, especially Olivia. When I got married before, she told me that if I was wronged, I could go to her and she would teach Sophia a lesson. And later, she really went to find Sophia. At that time, Sophia was just pregnant. I was overjoyed, thinking that having a child would win her heart back, and I was looking forward to the arrival of the little life. But later I found out that the child wasn't mine at all. It was David's. I went crazy and smashed everything at home, arguing with Sophia bitterly. David even went too far. He deliberately called me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, making me listen to the sounds of him and Sophia being intimate. He was panting, and there were sounds of flesh hitting flesh. At that moment, my stomach churned, and I vomited my guts out over the toilet. Bile mixed with gastric juice came out. In the end, I was shivering all over, cold. I looked up, and in the mirror, my face was deathly pale, my eyes were empty with bloodshot eyes, and my face was covered with tears and snot. When Olivia knew about this, she went to Sophia and slapped her. If I hadn't stopped her at the end, she would have pulled Sophia's hair out. I held her back, and her eyes were red. She shouted at Sophia furiously, "You bitch! Did a dog eat your conscience? James was so good to you. How could you be so ungrateful?" Sophia didn't fight back that time. Blood oozed from the corner of her mouth, and she lowered her head without saying a word. "What are you thinking?" Olivia pushed me. "Drink." I clinked glasses with her and drank it all in one gulp. After a few rounds of drinking, Olivia's face turned red. She leaned close to me, blushing, and whispered, "Do you really not like Sophia anymore?" I looked at her, and she immediately dodged my gaze, her ears turning red. I thought it was funny. I knew Olivia liked me. In my past life, I only had eyes for Sophia and even had a falling out with her because of Sophia. But when Sophia treated me badly, she would still stand up for me immediately. In this life, if I were to find a wife, I hoped it would be someone like her. Now I finally understood that sometimes love couldn't solve everything. Sophia and I had different family backgrounds, educations, and conditions. We were not well matched. She grew up in such a family and had been on the defensive since she was a child, sharp, sensitive, inferior, and cold. While I was doted on by my family since I was a child. My family gave me the courage to love recklessly, but it also became the root of my tragedy. I thought love could conquer all, but I didn't know that for someone like Sophia, a sincere heart couldn't warm her at all. I nodded. Yeah, I was blind before. Olivia lowered her head and slowly moved closer to me. She said in a low voice, "Then what do you think of me?" Before she could finish, suddenly someone grabbed my arm forcefully. I was startled and turned around to see Sophia with an ugly expression. Her eyes were downcast, her body tense, and her calm voice suppressed emotions I couldn't understand. "Come with me." I was afraid of making a scene in front of my friends, so I had to follow her out. "Let go." As soon as we went out, I shook her off and said with disgust, "Are you crazy? What are you acting up for again?" Sophia didn't say a word, just stared at me. Since being reborn, her attitude towards me had always been submissive, almost flattering. At this moment, her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was trying hard to suppress her emotions. She said hoarsely, "James, what did you say just now?" I was taken aback, then said firmly, "I said I don't like you anymore. I was blind before. Don't like me anymore." Sophia gave a strange laugh. Then she grabbed my collar, stared straight into my eyes, and her voice was as cold as if laced with ice shards. "Say it again. James, you said you liked me, that you wanted to be with me, and that you'd never leave me. Were those all lies?" She looked crazy, but I was stunned. This was wrong. I hadn't said these words in this life. These were clearly what I said before getting married in my past life. How did she know? Sophia quickly realized she'd said the wrong thing and subconsciously took a step back. I said in a low voice, "Sophia, you've been reborn too, haven't you?" She remained silent. The midnight wind howled past, and the fallen leaves on the ground were dragged along by the wind, creating a desolate scene. Occasionally, a car passed by, its light flashing and then disappearing quickly into the darkness. "Sophia," I forced a grim smile. "How dare you?" She really had been reborn. After what she did to me in the past life, how could she still say such things to me in this life? I had said those words and done as I said in the past life, but what was the result? I died with grievances. I had finally managed to let go and wanted to live a good life in this life, yet she tore open my wounds again, mocking that I could never escape my tragic past. Sophia was a bit flustered. "James, listen to me. I have been reborn, and now I've realized that I was so stupid in the past life. I didn't realize that I had fallen in love with you long ago. I'll make it up to you from now on, okay?" Slap. Sophia's head turned to one side. I had never hit a woman. In the past life, even when she cheated on me, I didn't lay a finger on her. But I didn't regret this slap. I said word by word, "Sophia, how dare you? How could she, after hurting me, so casually say that she had loved me for a long time?" This slap vented all the hatred in my heart. I used all my strength. The corner of her mouth split, and blood oozed out, but she just wiped it casually and said calmly, "Is that enough? If it's not enough to relieve your hatred, you can hit me a few more times." As she said this, she actually grabbed my hand and pressed it against her swollen cheek. Even though she was saying harsh words, her eyes suddenly turned red, and tears welled up. I was shocked. Sophia had never cried in front of me. In the toughest times of her past life, when her father gambled away the tuition she had saved with great effort and even beat her, she went to school the next day with bruises all over her body without shedding a tear. She worked 3 jobs a day, fainting from hunger and exhaustion several times, but she didn't cry. I had thought she was heartless by nature, but I never expected that she would cry in front of me. Sophia's tears diluted the blood at the corner of her mouth. She was in a sorry state, her body hunched over, and she pleaded, "James, come back. If you hate me and want to kill me, that's okay, but don't abandon me." I was almost driven crazy. "Sophia, are you out of your mind? What on earth is wrong with you?" She lowered her head, her voice trembling. I was too inferior. At that time, I was on guard all the time, thinking that everyone wanted to hurt me. You were so good, so outstanding, and completely from a different world than me. I didn't dare to like you, nor could I believe that you really liked me. I was afraid that if I happily accepted you, one day you would suddenly say that I wasn't good enough for you and that it was just a game. James, I was so stupid. I deserve to die. You can hit me, scold me, but please come back." She wailed as if she wanted to release all the pent-up emotions. "You don't know how I lived those years after you left." I couldn't help but sneer. "Sophia, didn't you love David? In the past life, didn't you drug me to death for him?" "Drug you?" Sophia was startled. "What drug? Are you still pretending?" I tightly grasped the roadside railing. Otherwise, I really couldn't guarantee that I wouldn't slap her again. The medicine I took later was replaced. At first, my health had improved, but later, the more I took the medicine, the worse I got. In the end, I bit down hard on the tip of my tongue, and a bitter taste filled my mouth. The woman I loved killed me for another man. Just repeating this matter made me feel like I was in agony. "I didn't," Sophia said eagerly. "I never did such a thing. I even told the butler to take good care of you. How could I kill you?" We looked at each other, and we both saw the realization in each other's eyes. If it wasn't her, then among the people who could get access to the medicine and also wanted me dead, there was only David left. So, it was David who killed me. I felt mixed emotions, but I didn't find it hard to accept. I had already died once. Who killed me didn't seem to matter much anymore. Even if Sophia didn't do it directly, David killed me for her, so she was ultimately involved. I felt rather disheartened, and an indescribable weariness spread throughout my body. Whether it was love or hatred, I was really tired. In this life, I just wanted to stay away from her and live a good life. The autumn rain came unexpectedly, and the raindrops pounded the ground. Sophia stood in the rain, in a sorry plight. It was hard to tell whether the liquid on her face was rain or tears. "James, please. What about David?" I said expressionlessly. "You two had a child in the past life. How do you explain that?" Sophia was speechless. After a long time, she said with difficulty, "He got me drunk. It was only that one time." I gave a sarcastic smile and didn't say anything. Sophia hung her head even lower. "From beginning to end, I only liked you. I never liked David." She continued. Just then, a gloomy male voice suddenly came from the darkness by the street. "Then what about me?" David emerged from the shadows. He was still wearing that old tracksuit, which was now tightly stuck to his body after being soaked by the rain. "Sophia," there was madness in his eyes. "You like him? Then what am I? What have these years I've been with you been for?" Sophia clenched her fists tightly, and the tenderness in her eyes when she looked at him was gone, replaced only by hatred. It seemed that David hadn't been reborn and was still the same David from the past life. He hadn't poisoned me yet, and I didn't even have a chance to take revenge. Sophia also understood this and said nothing. David was taken aback. "You hate me. Sophia, you actually hate me. If it weren't for you constantly sowing discord between me and James, we wouldn't have ended up like this," she said coldly. "I sowed discord." David laughed. He simply stopped pretending. "If you weren't so inferior and arrogant, how could I have instigated you? It was your own dark mentality. You wanted to get him but were afraid. You always stayed with me to make him jealous, trying to prove his love for you over and over again to satisfy your twisted psychology. Now, you're pushing all the blame on me." Sophia's fingertips dug into her palms. "James," David tilted his head, looking puzzled, as if he was just asking an insignificant question. "You have everything. Why do you still want to snatch Sophia from me?" He didn't seem to need my answer and continued talking to himself. "You have a good family background, you're good looking, and everyone surrounds you, loves you, and spoils you. Whatever you want, they'll bring it to you without you even having to ask. So many people like you. Why do you still want to take Sophia from me?" His voice trembled with gritted teeth. "I only have her. Why, when I only have this one person, do you still want to take her away? You already have so much." I said calmly, "Sophia is a person. Who she likes is her choice. I can't force her. Besides, I've never won. In this love game, I'm the only one who lost completely. Is that so? David walked towards me. Only then did I notice that he had been keeping one hand behind his back. A sense of foreboding suddenly welled up in my heart. Just as I was about to step back, he suddenly pulled out a dagger and rushed towards me. Die. His face was distorted, and he looked crazy. As long as you're dead, Sophia will be mine again. James, why are you so happy? You deserve to die. He was too close, and I didn't have time to dodge. My dilated pupils reflected his blood-shot eyes. Just then, a force suddenly pushed me away, and the sound of the blade piercing flesh was covered by the sound of the rain. David stared at Sophia in front of him, stunned. His fingers holding the dagger began to tremble, and he said in a panic, "Sophia." I stumbled and turned around. I saw that the knife had deeply pierced Sophia's abdomen, and the oozing blood was washed into a pale pink by the rain. She seemed not to notice and just smiled at me. As long as you're okay. By the time we got her to the hospital, Sophia was already in a complete coma. She had lost too much blood and was directly rushed to the ICU for emergency treatment. David was also taken away by the arriving police. It wasn't until the third day that Sophia woke up. I walked into the ward, looked at her, and felt as if there were so many words stuck in my throat, but I couldn't say a single one. She was so weak that her face was as white as paper, yet she still forced a smile with difficulty. "James, are you okay?" I asked with mixed emotions. "Why did you block that knife for me?" She lowered her eyelashes. "I don't know. I just didn't want you to get hurt." David's knife was aimed at my heart. Fortunately, Sophia was lucky and wasn't hit in a vital part. "What are you going to do?" I suddenly asked. Sophia quickly understood what I meant and said with a bitter smile, "Do what should be done. Tell the truth. He was practically your husband in the past life, and you even had a child with him." I sat down beside another bed. She said in a low voice, "But he killed you." I was silent. Sophia coughed a few times, her brows furrowed in pain. Then she said hoarsely, "James, I really know I was wrong. I was so wrong before. If..." Her voice choked up, and her lips trembled uncontrollably. "If I can change, would you be willing to?" "No," I interrupted her. "You saved me, but I also died because of you in the past life. At most, we're even. Even if you blocked a knife for me, you can't erase the harm you caused me before." Her eyes turned red, and she gritted her teeth tightly to suppress her sobs. "But James, you once said you'd love me forever." I suddenly felt a bit tired and laughed miserably. "Sophia, love can be exhausted. You spent 10 years wearing away my love bit by bit." Sophia's face turned deathly pale, and she looked panicked. "James, you can't do this. You were the one who said you loved me first." Before turning to leave, I took one last look at her. Sophia had lost a lot of weight, and the hospital gown hung loosely on her. Her eyebrows and eyes were still those of the girl I once loved, but her soul seemed to have aged. Maybe we had loved each other, but the timing was just wrong. "But now," I said softly, "Sophia, I really don't love you anymore." After walking out of the ward, I could still hear her desperate sobs. "But James, what should I do? Why did I come back to this life? Just to hear you say that you don't love me anymore. I might as well have died in the past life." I lowered my head. My eyes were dry, and I couldn't cry anymore because all my tears had dried up in my past life. I walked away quickly, leaving those cries behind until I couldn't hear them anymore. Sophia didn't cover up for David. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for attempted murder, and the school expelled him. I heard that his mother couldn't bear the blow and committed suicide by jumping off a building. I didn't go to the trial. In fact, I kind of understood that David hated me not so much for Sophia but rather because he was jealous of me. He was jealous that I had everything, so he tried every means to take Sophia away to show that he could also beat me. After losing Sophia, he went crazy. I heard that he went completely insane after learning of his mother's death. He was delirious and even insulted the judge during the sentencing. Of course, I was the one who had someone pass on the news of his mother's death to him. I also asked my father to have someone take good care of David in prison. I had always remembered the drugging incident in the past life, and he finally had to pay me back. 3 years later, I married Olivia. Both of our families attached great importance to this wedding. We held a grand banquet, and all the prominent people in the city were invited. The scene was extremely grand. Just as we were about to go on stage, the secretary suddenly trotted over, holding a red envelope with nothing written on it. "Mr. G, look. There's a card in this red envelope. I verified that it's real, but there's no name." He frowned. "What do you think we should do?" Olivia and I looked at each other and both guessed who it was from. She smiled. Well, since someone is eager to give money, we might as well accept it. Just then, my phone suddenly rang. It was a text message from an unknown number, and it simply said, "If you ever stop liking her, come back. I'll always be waiting for you." Olivia sneered. Then she can wait. She won't get what she wants even in her next life. I deleted the text message in front of her and blocked the number. Let's go. I took her hand and smiled slightly. Everyone is waiting for us. Those dark nights will finally pass, and I will never look back. Now, here comes the story from Sophia's perspective. Exclusive benefit for channel members. If you like it, remember to like and share. When I saw James again, I was stunned. He was 20 years old, full of vitality, completely different from the gloomy appearance in my memory. I had forgotten how long it had been since I last saw him. I couldn't move my eyes, greedily gazing at him. I really hadn't seen James for a very, very long time. When the butler said he was dead in the past life, I didn't believe it at first. It wasn't until I went back and saw his cold body. Strangely, at that moment, I didn't feel anything. Everything around me seemed to disappear. For a few seconds, I couldn't see or hear anything. It wasn't until they helped me up in a panic that I realized I had fallen down. I asked the butler calmly, "Did he leave any words?" The butler shook his head. "The master didn't say anything." "Oh. So he didn't leave me a single word." Indeed, all that could be said between us had already been said. When he loved me in our youth, he said countless sweet words. Later, when we turned against each other, we dragged out all of each other's painful spots and lashed out at each other mercilessly. He cursed me to die a bad death, and I called him despicable. What else was there to say? The good and the bad, there was nothing left to say. It was at this moment that I suddenly felt a dull pain in my heart. At first, the pain was fine and dense, not very sharp. However, it soon spread like a vicious bug, drilling holes everywhere. My heart seemed to be pierced with holes, and the pain was so intense that I had to kneel down to endure it. I looked at James. He was lying quietly on the bed, showing no reaction. In the past, if he saw me like this, even during our most intense arguments, he would definitely come to care about me. He was always so silly. But this time, he didn't even give me a glance. That's right, he was dead, completely dead, and would never appear in front of me again. I thought like this, but I didn't feel sad. I just felt like I was thinking about someone else's business. My body and mind seemed to belong to another person, separating me from my aching heart. What should I do? This is really going to cause me trouble. I thought. I have a meeting to attend tomorrow. Now it has to be postponed because I have to arrange his funeral. My throat suddenly felt itchy. I coughed a few times and then saw the butler's horrified eyes. He said in a panic, "Madam." I lowered my head and saw scarlet spots on my chest. "Whose blood is this?" I was a bit puzzled. Then, the itching in my throat became more and more unbearable, and I suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The butler went crazy with worry and dragged me to the hospital. The only thought in my mind was, "Oh, so this is my blood." After James died, I didn't shed a tear. I even went home to tidy up. He didn't have many things. He used to be a person who loved luxury so much, but now the room was empty, and he only had a few pieces of clothes from street stalls with no brand. It's good. I thought, after being entangled for so long, it can finally end. It wasn't until I opened the cabinet and saw a cabinet full of medicated oil. I had an accident while working as a food delivery worker before, and my leg was injured. It would ache terribly on rainy and overcast days. This medicated oil was specially made for me by someone he knew. At that time, I even laughed at him for buying so much. He smiled as he rubbed my calf and replied, "What if there's none left in the future?" Unfortunately, after getting married, I seldom went home, and every time I did, we would quarrel. I had only used this medicated oil a few times, less than half a bottle. Then I suddenly remembered that we actually had good times together. I once thought he was really nice, but in the endless quarrels and hardships, we eventually became hateful to each other. Suddenly, I felt something warm and wet on my face. I reached out to touch it and found that I had been in tears without even realizing it. After James died, I didn't forget him as quickly as I thought I would. Instead, he appeared in my dreams day and night, as if deliberately torturing me. Sometimes, I would dream of scenes from our youth. He casually handed me a lunchbox and said, "Sophia, this is Wagyu beef cooked by our nanny. It's really delicious." Strangely, at that time, I only thought he was arrogant and annoying, but now I suddenly realized that his straightforward love was actually quite cute. Later, I learned that this Wagyu beef was his favorite dish. He wanted to share his favorite thing with me, wholeheartedly and without reservation. But at that time, I really didn't deserve such precious love. When I was young, my inferiority complex made me overly sensitive. I erected thorns of defense all over my body, wounding everyone who tried to get close to me. James had a good family background and was handsome. So many people liked him. I couldn't believe that he would like someone like me, who seemed to have nothing to offer. There were so many tricks rich people played. I thought he must be playing with me, so I treated him worse and worse, hoping he would leave. He was like a rare species that had never appeared in my poor and dark world, disrupting my entire world and making me feel at a loss. But I also wanted to confirm his love for me again and again in his unwavering pursuit, in a rather despicable way. How sad and hateful that was. After getting married, our relationship seemed to improve a bit. But David constantly reminded me that he and we were from completely different worlds. He was right. The car I excitedly bought for James with the money I got for the first time was actually just an out-of-season item that his college suitors had given him long ago. What did I have that was worthy of his love? At that time, I didn't understand my own heart. I thought I really hated him, but I couldn't help getting closer to him. I kept showing up in front of him with David. Seeing his hurt expression, I would morbidly savor that bit of affection, thinking, look, he cares about me. Later, in my dreams, he changed again. He was lying on the hospital bed, looking at me coldly and saying, Sophia, I don't love you anymore. Then I would wake up suddenly, unable to fall asleep at night, and this happened every day. Sometimes I was happy, sometimes I was scared, and I had to go to a master. I asked the master, Master, does he have some unfulfilled obsession? Do I need to perform a ritual to release his soul? The master looked at me for a long time, sighed, put his hands together, and said compassionately, Benefactor, it's not him who can't let go. That day, I sat on the mountain for a long time before I realized that it was actually me who couldn't let go. It turned out that I had fallen in love with him long ago. 3 years after James died, I gradually started to go crazy. I ignored David and the child. No matter how crazy he got, I would just say coldly, you insisted on having this child. It has nothing to do with me. On James' birthday, I took 2 bottles of sleeping pills with wine. To make sure it worked, I even slit my wrist. The unbearable pain gradually became numb. Suddenly, a gentle breeze blew, the sun was warm, and the chirping of birds sounded in my ears. My hand was suddenly held softly. I turned my head, and the 20-year-old James came into view. Sophia, he smiled. Why did it take you so long to come? I looked at him for a long time. My vision gradually became blurry with hot tears. Then I slowly turned around and hugged him, holding him tighter and tighter. He was startled by me and pushed me. What are you doing? Who bullied you? Then he hugged me back and said softly with a smile, what's wrong with you? Do you miss me? My voice was choked with sobs. Yes, James, I miss you. I miss you so much that I can't bear it anymore. I wish we could stay in this moment forever. It's better than hearing you say you don't love me. At that moment, I realized that the pain of 1,000 arrows piercing the heart was nothing more than this. I lay on the bed, crying hysterically. Since this was the case, why was I brought back? I thought I could win him back and reverse our tragedy, but I didn't expect that I had completely lost him. The pain in my heart made it hard for me to breathe. I laughed and cried at the same time. I felt like I was going crazy, but I also felt more sober than ever. I clearly understood that my rebirth was just for atonement, to experience all the pain he had endured. Death is not the real departure. Now, he has truly left me completely. And for the rest of my life, I will be trapped in this endless despair, unable to break free.